we don't have to adopt any. So we could move into item number 4, which is presentations. This is the Niagara Regional Police Service 2022 proposed operating budget. What we'll do is I spoke to staff. We'll go through the presentation and hold your questions to the end of the presentation, and then we'll put the budget on the budget report onto the floor, and we can ask questions regarding the budget report and the presentations at the same time, because they intermingle. So it might be a little bit more efficient that way. Is that agreeable, Chief?
Yeah, that works fine. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, I'll turn it over to yourself to do the presentation of the 2022 proposed budget.
Thank you, Finance Committee Chair D'Angela, board members, staff members, and members of our community for the opportunity to present our proposed 2022 operating budget to you. And I appreciate the opportunity to provide some context surrounding our current situation and the financial pressures that we are experiencing. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our senior leadership team, in particular, Ms. Laura Rouleau, our finance manager, and her finance team for their efforts in putting together the budget. This year, as in past years, there's been an incredible amount of careful consideration and analysis that's gone into the preparation of the budget. The Niagara Regional Police Services Board are mandated to uphold all provincial adequacy standards as set out in the Police Services Act, and ensuring that we deliver adequate and effective policing to our communities. As the board knows and fully appreciates, matters relating to the sustainability of policing, the need for those involved in public safety to contain costs, and for the police services to operate as effectively and efficiently as possible is the expectation placed upon all police services by the community, police service boards, elected officials, and our funding providers. While the board's strategic plan for 2022 to 2025 has yet to be approved, the major themes and recommendations that were brought forward during the consultation process with stakeholder focus groups were taken into consideration with the development of our 2022 budget. In the development of the strategic plan, the overlying themes continue to focus on public safety, organizational excellence, and continuing to foster a healthy and respectful work environment. The board's strategic plan continues to serve as a roadmap to guide our service to deliver policing services effectively and efficiently to all residents and visitors to Niagara. The 2022 proposed budget is aligned with the board's strategic plan and identifies the resources that are necessary to achieve these strategic priorities. The year 2021 has seen the service continue to deal with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, including now the 4th wave of the virus, lockdowns and gatherings, while continuing to respond to an increasing demands placed on frontline officers, emergency services, investigative services, and our support services. The Pandemic Business Continuity Committee continues to meet once a week to review information and trends related to COVID-19 and the impact on the workplace and our members. Our approach has been rooted in medical guidance and emerging best practice to keep our members and our community safe. I wanted to highlight the tremendous advances on member wellness that we've achieved since the creation of the Member Support Unit. In 2019, thanks to the board's support, you approved the hiring of an in-house clinical psychologist, and then the following years continued to invest in further in member wellness by creating the Member Support Unit. As a result of their great work, the service has recognized the importance of the safeguarding of members that are in units that are at higher risk of secondary traumatic stress, and the process of checking in and protecting our members' mental health has been embedded as a regular practice within our service. We've also expanded the criteria for mandatory participation in the reintegration program to further protect members involved in critical incidents, including those that have resulted in death. To date, we have received very positive feedback for the reintegration program, where members expressed feeling supported by the service and by the board and confident to return to work. We've benefited from the clinical interactions with this service psychologist, where participation has more than doubled year to date. Lastly, our investigative units have been focused on a number of exhaustive investigations, including the January 2021 double homicide in Fort Erie, which has received significant media attention, and after 10 months of a very extensive investigation, has led to 3 arrests. This investigation, along with several other challenging homicide investigations that have occurred in 2021, are far from over, and the homicide unit now turns their attention to preparing for the long and arduous criminal justice process. Continuing with the 2021 year-end review, I wanted to highlight some statistics that help to provide some context for the board. The service has experienced an increase in calls for service and is forecasting to the end of 2021 with approximately 138,000 calls for service. This is up by 9.3% over 2020 and represents an increase of 5.6% over 2019's calls for service. As outlined on the slide, the region is experiencing an increase in homicides, traffic motor vehicle collisions when compared to our 4-year average. The region is also experiencing an increase in violent crimes. The crime statistics capture calls for service related to homicides, assaults, including domestic violence, as well as robberies. Emergency Task Unit has been experiencing a steady increase in calls for service that require officers with specialized training in high-risk scenarios to peacefully resolve situations that pose a threat to public and officer safety. I want to start the discussion of the proposed 2022 operating budget by highlighting those cost pressures that are impacting our base budget. This year, these pressures will increase our base budget by 4.4%, or $7 million over our 2021 budget. As reported, 90% of our operating budget are costs associated to salary, wages, and benefits. And as this slide indicates, 84% of the base increase for 2022, a total of $5.9 million, results from cost pressures related to our compensation. The 2022 proposed budget includes an estimated wage increase for the years 2021 and 2022. As the board is aware, members of the service are represented by 2 associations, and both collective agreements expired on December 31st, 2020. In addition, the service has been advised of significant increases to our employer-provided benefits for health, dental, long-term disability, and life insurance premiums of 18.8% over 2021 budget figures. These increases are mainly attributable to a rise in the cost of paramedical services, inflationary drug costs, and increase in usage of the benefit plans by our members. We are also realizing an increase to the cost of WSIB benefits for occupational injuries, partly due to recent wage settlements and other rising medical costs that translates to a 9.1% increase to our WSIB premiums. Further, statutory benefits such as Canada Pension Plan and employment insurance premiums are projected to increase by 6.8% for the 2022 year. Other non-compensation cost pressures include an adjustment to our fuel rate, which is currently set at $1.12 per liter at the pump to $1.25 per liter, and software licensing costs anticipated to increase by 3% from 2021 contracted pricing. Lastly, approximately 5.3% of the service's operating budget is funded by provincial grant programs. And over the past few years, we've experienced a significant reduction from this funding stream. In particular, our annual allotment of the court security and prisoner transport grant funding has declined since 2018. And since then, we have lost approximately $327,000 in annual revenues. Our base budget also includes a capital funding investment for infrastructure and an asset management plan. As you'll recall, during the 2022 capital budget presentation, the service explained the need to develop a sustainable capital funding strategy like the one adopted by the region that will ensure an asset replacement strategy essential for the continuity of service. And finally, the base budget includes new cost recovery revenues totaling $300,000, which partially offsets the cost pressures that we're experiencing in 2022. Our public radio safety unit continues to onboard emergency services partners, which not only provides for a unified interoperable radio system between the emergency service providers in the region, but also contributes to cost efficiencies for the taxpayer. As detailed throughout this presentation, our 2022 budget approach is evidence-based, and it's in alignment with the board's strategic plan. The 5 program changes that we will present to you today are investments towards enhancing public safety and organizational excellence. This year, our program changes total $798,644, which represents 0.5% increase over our 2021 operating budget. The first program change is related to the 911 program, and it's a request to add 4 911 call takers to support the growing demands on 911 call volumes. The board, through the service, has been contracted by the region's Emergency Services Division to provide 911 services for the entire Niagara region. This agreement was made in 2014 with the region, agreeing to fund the compensation for 12 communicators. This agreement has not changed for 8 years, despite a 30% increase in 911 calls since 2013. The primary drivers of the 911 call increase are the proliferation of wireless technology in Canada and societal expectation of expedient service in a wider array of circumstances. The Emergency Services Division at the region has agreed to fund the additional 4 communicators, and although the cost of this program is $539,293. Pending council approval, the program will be completely paid for by the region and therefore result in a 0 impact to our 2022 budget. Excuse me. The second program relates to a request from the finance unit for a coordinator of financial planning and reporting. The finance unit provides financial expertise, analysis, and reporting to all levels of the service and to a number of external stakeholders. With the growing expectation from the general public and funding agents to demonstrate fiscal responsibility and accountability, this has resulted in an increased demand for financial information and reporting from our finance unit. The unit currently employs 2 financial analysts who support approximately 50 programs and 108 departments, all on financial matters related to their operational management. The analysts assist program managers and the senior leadership team with budgets, variance analysis, preparing financial information for grant applications, including the interim reporting requirements, reviewing contract language in relation to financial terms, and providing cost-benefit analysis, including risk assessment for any new proposed strategic initiatives. The addition of a coordinator will not only provide additional analytical support to the service, this position will also act as a team leader to the two financial analysts and assist the finance manager with the coordination of activities related to budgeting, analysis, and financial reporting. This position will support fiscal responsibility, accountability, and cost containment for the service. It provides the support required to meet the increasing demands for service and to ensure staff wellness by reducing burnout. The cost of adding a finance coordinator position is $105,354 to cover wages and benefits. The third program change is a request for a staff sergeant to oversee and provide leadership to the 8-member Real-Time Operations Center, known as the RTOC. Created in 2019 as a pilot project, the RTOC unit was formulated to leverage technology to provide actionable intelligence, information, and support frontline officers 24 hours, 7 days a week, using camera support and in-depth analysis of social media and other data available through the internet. They are a vital resource providing virtual backup to our frontline members. Since its inception, the unit has been without a permanent supervisory position as it trialed various models until making a final decision to lead the unit with a staff sergeant. This position has been filled informally on an unbudgeted basis, and as a result, the unit has experienced inconsistent leadership. Funding this leadership role will provide the unit with stability and allow for expertise to be developed to grow and expand the level of service to further support the front line. Additionally, this leadership role will allow the unit to expand upon existing partnerships with municipalities and other public and private entities to access additional CCTV cameras and enhance our capacity to respond more strategically to situations that impact public safety. Without suitable leadership, the service will struggle to realize its full potential while continuing to evolve, respond, and process emerging technologies such as NG911, and with it, the influx of multimedia data. The cost of the position is $175,931 for wages and benefits and other allowances. The fourth program change is a request to add 3 constables to the Emergency Task Unit, or ETU as we refer to it, to support the growing demands for specialized response to highly volatile incidents that pose a risk to community and officer safety. The ETU employs carefully selected and highly trained officers to peacefully resolve situations. Since its inception in 2007, the composition of the unit has remained at 12 constables and 2 sergeants. And further to that, I can add that since 1993, when the Emergency Task Unit was first established, it has remained at 12 constables and 2 sergeants. This level was based on adequacy standards requiring a minimum of 12 tactical officers to qualify as a hostage rescue team, and in addition is considered the minimum number of skilled tactical officers required to safely respond to any critical incident. Over the past 5 years, the number of critical incident calls demanding a specialized response has steadily increased from 107 calls for service in 2016 to 186 calls in 2020. We anticipate the number of critical incident calls to exceed 200 by the end of 2021. The increase in calls has resulted in members routinely responding to calls while off duty, and while on their annual leave, which is having a detrimental effect on member wellness and work-life balance. Funding these additional positions will ensure workload demands are managed and member wellness is maintained, which will improve interest to recruit future members for these highly skilled positions. And through succession planning, the service will maintain continuity of service to respond to these high-risk situations. As mentioned earlier, the Member Support Unit has identified this unit as being at a higher risk of secondary trauma stress, and therefore it's important that we address the increasing workload demands and its effect on member wellness. The annual cost for this program is $434,032 to cover wages, benefits, and other allowances. However, due to the lag to recruit uniform officers to fill these vacancies, the program change is planned to begin July 1st, 2022, therefore costing $224,016 for 2022, with the remaining budget to be absorbed in 2023. The fifth and final program change is a request to add 4 detective constable positions to the homicide unit. The homicide unit is responsible for criminal investigations involving homicides, sudden death, and various SIU investigations. The unit is a subset of the major crime unit, and since its inception in 1993 has employed 5 detective sergeants and 2 detective constables. This request is to support increasing homicide rates in addition to growing demands resulting from changes to investigative processes, the volume of digital and forensic evidence created by the abundance of technological devices available, and increasing workload demand from the criminal justice system involving disclosure requirements. To date, the unit faces demands for service related to 6 unsolved crimes since 2019, 15 solved matters currently before the courts, and 13 cold cases outstanding from 1978 to 2010. This is in addition to the current 6 homicides that have occurred already in 2021. Presently, the homicide unit has had to depend on the redeployed resources from other major crime units such as sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse, which can result in negative impacts on investigations within those specialized areas within the service. Funding these positions will result in an increased ability to effectively manage all complex investigations and bring unsolved homicides to a successful conclusion. Further, it will reduce member fatigue and support the service goal to maintain a healthy workforce. In addition to the emergency task unit, investigators within the homicide unit have also been identified as being at a higher risk of secondary trauma stress. And once again, I cannot overstate the importance of addressing the demands on our members and our collective responsibility to create an appropriate work-life balance for our members. The annual cost of this program is $586,685 to cover wages, benefits, and other allowances for the 4 detective positions. Again, however, due to the lag in recruiting uniform officers to fill these spots, this program change is planned to begin July 1st, 2022, therefore costing $293,342 for 2022, with the remaining budget to be absorbed in 2023. To recap, our overall 2022 budget increase, including the program changes, results in an overall net expenditure before indirect allocation budget of $168,877,688, which represents a 4.9% increase over our 2021 budget. It's important to point out the budget assumptions that are used to develop this proposed budget. These assumptions highlight the risks as well as opportunities as follows. With respect to continued costs associated with the COVID-19 pandemic in 2022, we've included a nominal amount to support continued decontamination of vehicles and a reliable supply of personal protective equipment. The most significant cost impact in 2021 from the COVID-19 pandemic on our service was the loss of City of Niagara Falls OLG transfer payments resulting from the closure of the casinos. However, with the reopening of the casinos in July of this year, we expect to be at the pre-pandemic funding level of $4.2 million for the 2022 calendar year. The budget includes a wage estimate for the years 2021 and 2022, as the 3 collective agreements for the 2 associations representing the members of the service all expired on December 31st, 2020. Provincial grant funding levels totaling $9.3 million will remain at the 2021 actuals. The 3-year community safety and policing grant totaling $2.5 million will expire on March 31st, 2022. Ontario Police Services have yet to hear from the Ministry of the Solicitor General regarding the extension of this grant program beyond March 31st, 2022, or any consideration for a different grant program to replace this one. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Court Security and Prisoner Transport Grant, with annual revenues of $6.5 million, has been declining over the past few years, and for 2022, funding announcements are not expected until January. These 2 grants represent 97% of the total grant revenue that's received by the service, and therefore poses a significant risk to the budget if not renewed in 2022. Lastly, we want to highlight the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019 as implemented by the province, which we expect will be enacted in the spring of 2022, and its potential net financial impact on police services is yet to be determined. In conclusion, in preparing the proposed 2022 budget that's before you today, we have taken a holistic approach to ensure that we have the necessary resources in place to adequately and effectively serve our community. In keeping with the themes identified during the strategic planning process, the service remains committed to organizational excellence, a sustainable and healthy workplace, and fiscal management. When we speak to organizational excellence, it's with the understanding that we must invest in our human resources to have a healthy and sustainable workforce. These 3 areas of focus are all interconnected and ultimately come together to ensure that we are able to deliver on our commitment of public safety. This concludes our presentation. At this time, I would invite any questions from the board in regards to the 2022 operating budget and the program changes. Thanks again for the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you, Chief, and thanks for your team for doing an excellent job on the presentation. It's very helpful in understanding the proposed 2022 operating budget. So at this time, what I was going to do is take a motion to receive the presentation and then take a motion to put the budget onto the budget report onto the floor. And that way you can ask the chief questions on either or, because some of them will be overlapping. So at this point in time, if I could ask 2 members to move and second the presentation. Moved by Chair Steele, second by Member Lawson. All those in favor of receiving the presentation? Those opposed? It's carried. And then I'll ask now to have a motion to put on the budget report. Let me just get the It's the 2020 Niagara Regional Police Services and Police Service Board proposed operating budget. It's item 5.1 under new business. If I could have a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor. Member Eek and Member McKendrick. So at this point in time, I'll open it up for questions on either the report or the presentation to the chief and his team. Member Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. Draw your attention to slide 7. And I'm just curious about the cost of fuel. Some articles I'm reading, some projections are saying $1.65 a liter by Christmas and staying there for a substantial amount of time, which is another huge increase, so even over $1.25. So I don't know how many kilometers we drive a year as a whole, but I'm curious that could increase fuel use immensely and fuel costs. Do we have a contingency plan for that, or are we anticipating any higher costs? I mean, we're already at $1.45. You know, we're already 20 cents above our $1.25 that we just raised it to. We're up to $1.45 in many places, and they're projecting another 20 cents yet on top of that. So just curious if we're planning for that.
I can answer that question. So through to the chair. We actually, we find that our fuel account or budget is very volatile. It sort of goes up and down as the price of fuel increases and decreases. Last year, we had our fuel price at $1.20. We reduced it to $1.12. Because the region at the time had estimated that we would be seeing 99 cents as our fuel price for 2021. This year, they're recommending it to be $1.35. So one of the things that we had decided as a group in finance is we didn't really want to experience the fluctuations for this line because fuel is essentially a commodity. So what we looked at was a 10-year trend. And what we'd like to propose is to continue with this 10-year sort of rolling trend. So what we found over the last 10 years is the highest average has been $1.28 and the lowest was 99 cents with a medium of about $1.21. So what we're proposing is to sort of hold it at $1.25. So we're going back up again. And then we'll try to mitigate that fuel impact if it does go up. Remember, this is an average. So it's an average of $1.25 means we could go as high as $1.35 for half year and $1.15 for the other half of the year. And so what we're proposing is we'd like to hold it at $1.25 and then mitigate that if we do see pressures from that line through our contingency reserve, bringing it in. If we're favorable in that line, we'd like to move it back into contingency reserve and try to mitigate sort of that fluctuation so that we're not seeing that volatile change in our budget. So we did plan $1.25. We did look at some trends in 2022, and believe it or not, the trends we were seeing were not indicating that we'd be seeing what we're seeing today. Actually, some of them are estimating we'd be at about $1.15 next year. So that's our plan. Our plan is to hold it at $1.25 and mitigate any increases plus or minus using our contingency reserve. And that's sort of our plan for now.
Okay, thank you. I guess it all comes down to which prognosticator you wish to look at. So hopefully it doesn't get to $1.65 and stay there. So we'll go with yours, Laura, as being the better crystal ball looker. So, okay, that's good. My question. Thank you.
Laura, just to follow up on that, do we get a discount for volume purchasing on the gas rate?
Yes, we do. So we always publish the pump price because I think it's easier for us to have a conversation with that. But our actual budget price rate is much lower because we do take out the HST and we also get a reduction of 4 cents from our current vendor, ESSO.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I had Member Gale, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So that's what I was going to make a point on with Laura. The price is not that high right now with her forecast because you have the HST out of it and you're getting 4 cents off. So really, I think the savings this year already through till we're October now, we should have a credit on our account for the fuel pricing. Because if you're forecasting $1.25, that takes it up to $1.40 some odd, plus you get 4 cents off on it. I think we're pretty reasonable on the forecast there. And Member Gibson wasn't aware, I believe, that the HST was not included in that price, plus the discount from the supplier. So really, I think your forecast is pretty good there. It's always been high. I've always said it's too high, but it's better to have a credit at the end of the year than it is to owe money on it. Chair, can I go further with other questions I have?
Yes, Member Gale, feel free.
Thank you. So can you go to slide 16, please, if you can, and put it on? I talked to it, but I want to see it again, if you don't mind. Sorry, I've got a bunch of numbers on my pages and I can't remember which one 16 is, but I know I've got that first.
Sorry, I'm sharing my screen. Are you seeing 16 or okay? So, all right.
16 is the budget risks and opportunities. Is that the
Yeah,
one?
so one of the items on there I'll talk to before, well, Laura puts it on the screen, is about the Niagara Falls casino money. Did we get that last year, Laura? Or the year before?
Last
Year being 2020.
Yes, we did.
We did the whole 4.2.
Yes.
Okay, so you're presuming, can you get the screen or no? It's not on ours. You're presuming that we will get the 4.2 based in this 4.9% increase. And if we don't get it, it really hurts us. Is that the way I look at this when I see the screen eventually?
Sorry, for some reason I'm sharing my screen, but I can't see what you see. But
I just see other people.
I'll try to figure out. So I apologize. So last
Okay, I'll pull it up
year,
on my. I'm sorry, I should have done this. I can just pull it up on my computer. Sorry.
So for 2022, we are hoping that we are all back to a normal pre-pandemic position, and we will be receiving, and we're hopeful that we'll receive the 4.2 million in casino funding. What happened in 2021 is that the region has, as you will recall, we actually anticipated the casinos being open as of April 1st of 2021. That was in our 2021 budget assumption. And so we had a shortfall of $1.5 million, and the region had offset that with COVID funding money. So it's been included in their COVID costs, the shortfall that we were experiencing this year. Unfortunately, the casinos didn't open until July of 2021, and therefore the region has been offsetting our casino revenue loss with COVID monies. So they've been offsetting that loss on our budget. So to answer your final question, the 4.9% includes the assumption that we will receive full funding from the casino. If we continue to feel the impact of the COVID in 2022, the region will likely offset that as they have been with COVID funds.
Okay, so any way you look at it, we should be getting the money, be it the region or the
Correct.
city.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. The other one is on that slide, the wage settlement provisions for 2021 and 2022. It said it put in a number for that. What percentage did you put in there for that suggested? Or
Member Gale, I think we'd have to go into confidential for that.
Okay,
The fact that bargaining is ongoing.
Okay, that's a good answer. Thank you. So that's 16. I'm pulling that up now. Okay, you don't have any screen, so I'll go back to number 14 now then, Laura. And that's where the chief, if you ever get, oh, you're getting it up now. Good. Okay. So Chief, I'm proud that you're putting more detective constables on, as well as the ETU expansion. Question, how much does that hurt frontline? Is it obvious that 4 detective constables come from frontline to there, and therefore next year you'll be asking us for 4 more in addition to what you had before?
So through you, thanks for the question, Member Gale. And, quite frankly, this is what has hurt us in the past, in the years past, when the adequacy standards were first established, and there was the creation of all of these various specialty units. We essentially took those, took officers from the front line and put them into the specialty units without replacing them on the front line. What this budget request is asking for is an increase in our authorized strength so that the numbers on the front line remain the same, and that these are net new positions that will go into these very specialized units, be the homicide unit and be the emergency task unit. And that's why we deferred until July 1st, so that we have the opportunity to recruit those additional members.
Okay, thank you for that. So bottom line is just we need more officers, and I hate hurting frontline, but I understand why you're doing this. I'm totally in favor of the frontline policing, and so is the public. And that's the issue we have because as police board members, we don't represent the region, the police. We represent the public on this, and they're just going to be looking at 4.9%, but they're getting more officers out there, so that can justify it somewhat on it. Then the asset management replacement strategy. I don't know what page that was on. I'm sorry, on the bottom corner of your screen, I couldn't pick up the numbers all the time. But there was an increase of that. I think it was $800,000, I believe, by memory I'm going on. So that's just a strategy. That's not a program, or could you explain what that term means? Asset management replacement strategy for 800,000.
Through you, Chair, I'll let Laura explain that. It was part of our capital budget presentation of it's losing track of time now. It was a couple months ago, but she can refresh your memory on that.
So you through to the chair. So you'll recall when we presented the capital budget, we talked about a funding shortfall that we had between our asset replacement. These are our assets that we currently have and need to replace, and that we needed to hit a target of 5.6 million annual contributions in order to be able to replace all of our assets over a 10-year period. And as a result of that, we adopted, in consultation with region staff, we talked a lot with their capital financing analysts to come up with a strategy that we as well would be able to fully fund our assets by, I think it's 2028. We would have to invest some new monies into the towards our contributions to our capital reserves, and so we have set aside about 320,000 of our new sort of any guidance money towards capital financing. The other 500,000 we've repurposed the 1-day salary funds. We are using it one time in 2022 to also help us augment and get our capital funding reserves increased. And so that's what makes up the 0.8. So 0.3 of it is new monies, 0.5 is just repurposing some compensation salary monies.
Okay, thank you for that. And Chief, I know some of this was covered before, or a lot of it was covered before, but I'm bringing this out for the public because I think these are the questions that the people will ask on it. So as far as benefit increases, claims increases, I know we shop it around, but those were very high this year. And that's a big reason for the increases we have. What can we do about this, Chief? I know you can't, you can talk to the officers about the claims, about being safer or whatever wording you want to use, but the dental increases, the things like this that have gone through the roof, what strategy have we got in place to try to counteract this? Is it putting it on the open market more or what?
So through you, Chair, recall trying to think now, it's about 2 years ago, we went from one provider of services and changed to our current provider at Green Shield. So, and at that time, that was the best available option on the market, and we continue to look for options. Essentially, you know, it's a fee that is charged on top of the benefits that are used by the members. So really the only, and the benefits of course are negotiated through the association or the various associations and the board. So it's whatever the benefits are being used plus the fee. So the fee is really the only negotiable piece in the equation. And you know, assuming that the benefits are being administered properly, which, you know, we have no evidence that they're not being administered properly. So, I mean, we will continue to look for opportunities in the future for a vendor that perhaps provides a less fee, but currently that's the best option that's available to us.
And is there any, I know you look at the safety of the officers. I'm trying to word this question right, but anything we can do to cut down the amount of claims by the officers and that? It's kind of a stupid question, but I got to ask it. What can we do to try, because we pay a fee on every claim on these things, be it dental, be it everything. Is there anything we can do?
Well, I think what we can do is ensure that the claims are legitimate, and again, that's part of what we ask the provider to ensure, is that the claims are all legitimate. We have no reason to believe that there's any abuse going on, and that the claims are all in accordance with the collective agreement. So I mean, I don't know that I can provide any more. I see Laura has her hand up. She may be able to provide.
That was a far-reaching question. I know. Okay, I'm just going to say, Chair.
Member Gale, maybe we'll let Ms. Rulo speak on
Sure.
that. She had her hand up.
Sure.
Could add some additional information.
Yeah, so through to the chair. So Member Gale, we have for health and dental and the health and dental benefit provider. We went to market in 2017, and we have an administrative services only plan, which means that we carry the risk and we pay for all the claims experience, and all we pay is as the chief mentioned, an administrative fee to the benefit provider. Currently, our current provider, their fee is 4%, and that's pretty low in the market. Our previous benefit provider, it was around 8%. So we went to market to see if we could get a better a fee, and our current provider was one of the lowest, as well as they had a great administrative program in terms of just monitoring, you know, the benefits and ensuring that there was no misuse of it. But I also wanted to add that if there are any surpluses or deficits on account, we actually, it's our funds, and we record those funds. So we were actually for a couple of years riding on about a $900,000 surplus on account. And so what we did is in previous years, we mitigated, we didn't take the increases that were accumulating over a couple of years because we had such a huge surplus. And so we didn't want to burden the budget. We figured we could ride it with that surplus monies that we had on account. But lately it's been eroding, and we felt that we needed to increase to the recommended premiums for those benefits, mainly because because of those issues that we've had addressed, rising drug costs and usage and so forth. But for the most part, we try to keep it down as much as we can by sort of mitigating that balance on account. But for the benefit provider, it's a very low rate that we are currently paying.
Okay, thank you for that. And so I just want to let the other board members know, I can't support this budget. The last page on the report, the very last page, 100 and whatever it is, shows the increases over the last 8 years, I guess it is, or 5 years or whatever it is. And this term of regional council, or the last 4 years, has been averaging over 5%. And every year I think, okay, next year it'll be better because we hired 40 officers. And I know there was a delay in getting officers. I know of COVID, but we represent the public, and I can't, there's got to be a better way than 4.9% on this. When we know that there was contracts out there at about 2%, the people are asking what's causing the extra amount. I know there's claims. I know all the reasons for this, but we have to have a better way, and I can't support it. I know that the first year of my term on this board, we went for 0%. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe 0% was far too low, but 4.956% over the last 3 or 4 years has been horrible. So I'm just letting the board know that I think the chief is doing a great job. The deputies, Laura, you come through with the amounts for us, but there's got to be a better way, and someone has to come up with it. And I won't be supporting this. Thanks very much, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member Gale. I had Member Eek next to speak on the list.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning. My question is around the manpower that, in terms of dollars that are included currently in the budget for frontline officers. Approximately, I think we have around 650 frontline officers, and the 2021 budget did include the additional 40 officers to be budgeted for. And as in every workspace place, we have attrition, and those two questions, whether or not we have fully funded the 40 additional officers and we compensate for attrition impacts in order that the authorized force levels and adequacy standards are being met. So I guess I'm saying, is it all in and all covered, that there's no surprises?
Chief, did you want to comment on that?
Sure. So you're quite right, Member Eek. Thank you for the question. As a result of the 2021 budget, there was an increase to our authorized strength of 40 additional frontline officers. That's over and above any that we may lose through attrition, through retirements, through resignations, et cetera. So those 40, we have now, we've hired those additional 40 officers, and we continue to replace any officers through recruiting efforts that may retire throughout the course of the year. We are limited by the number of intakes that the Ontario Police College hosts. They host 3 intakes each year, and so we look to have our next intake going in January, again based on the projections of retirements that we anticipate in 2022, along with any new positions that are approved through the budgeting process.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further, Member Eek?
No, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. Any other board members with questions or comments to the chief? Oh, Member Lawson?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This is actually to Ms. Rouleau. Just to confirm, Ms. Rouleau, that when I'm looking at the numbers, the 3.7% of the 4.9 is actually due to compensation, which means that a good chunk of the budget proposals is out of our control because it's based on the compensation increases that are either expected or benefit increases, things like that over the next coming year, as well as the new complements of officers that we have. Is that correct?
The 3.7% represents just the base. So you're correct on all of those, except it doesn't include the program changes.
Sorry, yes, program. I do see program changes are off to the side. So it means that we really only have control over 1.2% of the budget request increases. The rest is actually really prescribed to us. So we're kind of out of control, or not that we're out of control. That's not the right word. There's parts of it, the budget, that are out of our scope of control because of negotiated contracts and everything else.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lawson. Anything further? Oh, Member Gibson.
That's a really good point, Jen, and I'm glad you brought that up because I look at it as well and say, 4.4 base budget increase. It's a lot. And I know at the region, at council, we're going to hear about that. So the real takeaway here for the public is that it's only, the actual increase is only 1.2% for programs for infrastructure within the police department. The rest is all negotiated salary mandated by the province, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a really good point, and one that we're going to have to make sure that we make very clearly with the councillors at the Niagara region. So, because 1.2% to me is a very reasonable increase. I know to Member Gale's point about the taxpayer still has to pay it and there'll still be concern and everything, but it is important to shed light on what we can control and what we can't control. So that's a really good point. I'm glad that was brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gibson. Any other questions or comments to the chief at this time? We
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Member Eek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Certainly, as Member Gibson has just spoken to, the fact that Regional Council is going to have certainly some questions when planning for the 2022 budget. I think they set a mandate of plus 2%. And if we take a look at this budget and extrapolate to go from 4.9% increase down to 2%, we are looking at a substantial amount of dollars. I just subtracted it out in terms that we're looking at about $4.6 million. So that would be a bit of a challenge, I think, as we perhaps review our budget. But I just want to make people realize the amount of funds that we're talking when we're talking small percentage increases. It's a substantial amount of funding budgetary dollars. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Eek. And anything below the 3.7 would actually result in service cuts at this point in time. We only, as the couple of members have mentioned, the 1.2 is what we're really working with. And some of those have been additional program changes that the chief feels are very valuable to bring forward to make Niagara a safer place and to make sure that we have adequate and effective policing. So that's why it's at 4.9 at this point in time. Any further comments? If I don't see any further, Chair Steele.
Thank you, Chair D'Angelo. Just to the board, to Member Gale's comments with regards to this. I mean, I have no issue with referring this and delaying it. If Member Gale wants to come forward with a number of issues that he feels he can bring the budget down to a reasonable level that he would see fit, I don't think that's unreasonable to ask. I'd like to see us go into the region as a unified board in support of our budget. But if Member Gale has some ideas to lower the 4.9%, I have no issue with listening to those.
Member Gale, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to present at this point in time. But before you do that, if I could go to Ms. Rulo just to get a timeline of how much time we have to, if we wanted to defer this for some further discussion, how that fits into the region's budget timelines.
So we are scheduled to present on November 25th. The region is requesting that we have our budget submitted to them early November. So we would, we would probably only have till about the next board meeting, which I think is scheduled October 28th, to really make any changes, because you'd have to then, it would have to be brought before you, you would have to approve it, and then it would give us time to send it over to the region so that they could put their levy budget together.
Okay, thanks
So
for that
we don't-
update. So just going back to Chair Steele, then that would be our option, is to defer it to the board meeting, which would be coming up on October 28th, to meet the regional's guidance timelines. But I'll let member Gale speak.
Sorry, I got a cuckoo clock going off here. If you can hear me. I have no problem deferring it and looking at other ways, but this is up to the chief with regards to hiring of officers and the 1.2%. 1.2% makes a difference on this. The whole thing is, can the public understand things like the asset management and the ripple effect of building things, staffing things, providing asset management to it, all the ripple effect of the costs that we get with hiring new officers is what we get the increases in the 1.2%, be it the claims, the benefits and that. And people seem to not understand that there's added costs for everything we do. If we get a new computer program, next thing we have to buy is a virus protector for it. And it goes on and on everything that we do. It's not as simple as hiring 40 officers. With it comes cruisers and other items. I would love to look at items, and this is in the capital budget, but about with COVID, the price of cars going through the roof right now. Can we hold off on cars? No, I'm not trying to go into the capital budget right now. But as far as operating procedures too, on it, there's a number of things here. I'm hoping that you, Chair, meaning Chair D'Angela, have looked at the costs of the benefits and our tendering procedures on this. The gasoline question from earlier that Member Gibson asked, I knew that it didn't have the HST in it. I thought it was still too high at this. But again, we're going crystal balls at whether it'll be $1.60 or $1.65 for a year. Every year I've been here, it's been lower than what the forecast is. And many times I've said it should be less than that. But I know it's better to have a surplus at the end of the year. So if you want to defer this, that's fine. I have the right to vote against it because I think the public is fed up with the 4.9% on it. It's not the chief's fault. It's not this board's fault. It's the fault of the society that we live in, that every year we're going to have 5% increases, I feel, between 5 and 6%. There's nothing we're going to do about it. So every year we're going to have this conversation. I probably won't be on this board a year from now because the tenure of council's up then. So I'm stating my case now, for lack of better words, that don't be surprised 2 years from now when that board comes back with a 5 or 6% increase, and you do the same conversation every year. And the tenure that I've been here, this is my 7th or 8th year on it, nothing has changed. It's always that way. And it's not the fault of the chief or this board. It's the way things go. I know I'm going on a rant here, so I don't see the point of deferring this. I will vote against it. But I think the provincial government or someone has to come up with a better plan rather than have every board in the province go through this procedure every time, and knowing that 97% or 95% of our budget is wages. So there's not a lot of room here to fool around other than tendering for benefits and other things here. Really, it's nice to think that we represent the public, but we don't have a lot of control of this at all. The chief, being a community-minded person, lets us be in control. If we had a different chief, he might say, damn it, this is the way it is. I'm going to appeal it or whatever. But this chief is good and takes our opinions on it and things like this and gives us reasons for this. That could change in years to come. Sorry I went off on this, Mr. Chair, but it gets sickening every year to go through this every time and then coming up with 5 or 6%. When we tried 2 terms ago to hold at 0 and then at 2%, there's a happy medium there and we haven't found it. So thank you.
Thanks for your comments there. But you also have to remember, over the past couple budgets, we've made some service adjustments to increase frontline officers, which is a cost that gets carried forward. So it hasn't just been an increase, but there's also been some service adjustments along the way. So I just want to make sure that's highlighted in there. And I have Member Gibson.
And Chair, just further to what you said, the ripple effect on that with the officers is what we'll be paying for the next few years. And it's, people have to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, Member Gibson?
Yeah, that's to my point right there. You know, Niagara is projected to increase 200,000 people by like 20, 25 years down the road. The number of police officers per 100,000 in Canada is like 150 to 200. So in 20 years, we're looking at increasing our number of police officers by 200-300 people. So even if we went every year and increased, you know, 50, we're still going to barely keep up. And being that a majority of the increase is salaries, it's inevitable. The issue here is to let the public understand, or some way to create that understanding within the public, so the public understands that, you know, every year we're going to have to increase because we have, you know, we have 20,000 people coming in every year, and we have to increase, you know, 10 officers for that 20,000 at X amount of cost. So that is the substantial amount of money, that's where it's going. And it's important that we try to inform the public of that. And that is why there's nothing worse than, you know, we don't grow as we need to with numbers, and 20 years down the road, we're playing catch up to get 150 police officers. So, and then nobody, you know, you phone the police, nobody ever comes because we're obviously prioritizing, et cetera. So it's a matter of education to the public. I hate to use the word education, but it's a matter of getting that out to the public to say that the majority of the increases here are for staff to go with the growing Niagara. And everybody knows Niagara's growing. Council, regional council, we've talked about that, the amount of growth that's anticipated, and they want the growth and everything. Well, with that comes additional police resources automatically. And if you want to maintain the mandated level of adequate service to the public, that's the way it is. So it's really, to me, I don't have a problem with it. If we're hiring more officers to keep up to the growth in Niagara, it's just how do we inform the public and let the public understand that there is no choice. The day will come when we're over 1,000 police officers here easily. And I expect that in the next 20 to 30 years for sure, to keep up with the public. So it's really just about letting the public understand and creating a way for them to understand that, you know, this is how it is. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gibson. And again, just going back to the chief and his team's presentation, they did highlight a lot of the impacts of what's happening in this budget. And that's the information that we're trying to get out to the public. And it'll happen at regional council also when the presentation is done at regional council. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to give the public a good understanding of what's happening and what we're trying to achieve here from a police service and a police service board. Any further? Oh, Chief.
Thanks. And I certainly understand Member Gale's frustration. And, you know, I think the reality is we're in an open forum now, and you know, I applaud the board for the transparency in having this budget presentation in a public forum. I'm really satisfied with the work that's been done by Laura and our entire senior leadership team in putting together the budget that, you know, quite frankly, is what's required to deliver adequate and effective policing to our community. The growing demands on our staff, the increased calls for service, the impact on our homicide unit, on our emergency task unit, we can't continually expect them to be available 24/7 to respond to calls for service on their annual leave. When it's, you know, it takes a minimum of 12 people and the unit is only 12 people, there's got to be some give and take. So in past budgets, we have deferred these program changes because we had to prioritize for frontline policing. And at this time, we're putting forward what we believe are very needed program changes to meet the growing demands on our police service. The calls for service that we're responding to Again, the record number of calls for service, and they've never been more complex and challenging in terms of the calls for service that we're responding to. So again, I know the board has been very supportive of our budget requests in the past, and I appreciate your deliberation and consideration for the budget that's before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Member Gibson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry to go on about this, but if you look, I quickly looked up the stats, 187 police officers per 100,000 in Canada for 2017. If you quickly punch the numbers out, that works out to about 20 more police officers that we need per year if you base it on the growth of 200,000 people by 2050, which I think is the number. So we know what that equals in dollars. We know what that equals in extra police cars and equipment and training. It's just a standard, period. And that is substantial. And as what is it, 90-something% of our budget is salary dollars. It's just the way it is. And I think that people have to just simply know that if, as Niagara grows, so must grow the ambulance service, so must grow the fire department, so must grow the police departments, etc. And it's just the hard facts of it. So that's just my point. Thank you.
Okay. Member Lawson?
Thank you. Hopefully my light doesn't go out again. I don't know why it's going out in my office, but if it goes dark, it's not on purpose. I did want to speak to the fact that being an accountant, working strictly or a lot with capital and operating budgets, I'm actually quite impressed, and I did pass along my thanks to the chief, along to Ms. Rillo for the budget. It's very well presented. It takes a lot of things into consideration, and I feel that one of the things that is being missed here is the fact that the service is a service. And I think one of the things that sometimes the public may forget is that they're not driving revenue. So it's not like it's a business where you've got opportunities to increase revenue and things like that. So of course, when you're looking at cost increases, you're only going to see one side of the issue. If there was an opportunity to increase revenues, those revenues would obviously offset some of the impact of the costs that we're seeing. So I think that's a really important part to understand with operating budgets on when you're looking at a service-based organization, that you're going to see higher increases. And oftentimes, especially if it's service-based, it is going to be due to staffing, which means, again, it's usually controlled if there's associations that are involved and things like that. So I think I'm actually quite happy with the budget. I think it's actually, if anything, it's modest as far as the increase that's being requested for additional program changes. And I'm supportive of the budget itself. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Member Lawson. Any further comments? Ms. Rillo?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple of points. One is on the gas, to Member Gale. The $1.25 that we've reported is what would be at the pump. The budget rate that we have in our budget is more like $1.05. So I just wanted to clarify that the $1.25 that we've reported, we find it easier if we just report the pump price, but then we discount that and reduce it for the HST and any efficient or any discounts that we're getting from the service provider. So that $1.25 is the pump rate, not the budget rate. The other thing that I really want to highlight is I think it all speaks on page 3 of the presentation where we have our little table, and I wanted to just remind you that the region gave the ABCs a 2% guidance. The levy department's got a 4.1% guidance. Now, to be fair, 1% of that of their guidance number was to fund their capital financing deficit. So they assigned 1%. If you see in that table, we have 0.5% towards our capital financing. So they've given themselves a whole 1%. They didn't even give us anything. They gave us 2%. They base it on the CPI index. Everyone knows that inflation is way higher than 2%. And you're seeing that, and that's sort of what we try to highlight in this budget, is that most of our lines are greater than 2%. The other cost pressures that we're seeing is fuel rate. And to everyone's point, our budget, 90% of our budget is staffing. If we have to go back and cut, we would have to cut it in staffing because we can't cut the fuel rate. It's going up, and that's the reality. And we've also got, we've lost 0.1% in just grant funding from our courts. And so as we lose in the grant funding, if we don't get it from the levy, there is no other option for us because, as Member Lawson says, we don't have a lot of opportunities for revenue generating. But to speak to that, this year's budget, the IT department was able to increase our cost recovery for our P25 by $300,000. We got net new money from that initiative, which I think hasn't really been highlighted. So where we have an opportunity to find cost recoveries, we do. We've also in 2021 have made, the finance department has taken upon themselves to make sure we review all MOU agreements, all contracts, to make sure that we're maximizing on cost recoveries, that we're not financially disadvantaged. So there are great efforts in this organization for cost containment and to maximize cost recovery wherever we can. But when you look at the breakdown on that table 3, if we're going to cut, there's very little option for us with 90% of our budget being salaries and staffing. And that's all I wanted to say for now. Thank you.
Member Gibson?
Chair, I think if everybody's had a go here at discussing this, I think we should call the question.
Yep, that was next on the list. So at this point in time, we have a mover and a seconder to the motion. Report 2022 Niagara Regional Police Services and Police Service Board proposed operating budget. All those in favor? Those opposed?
Chair, can I ask for I'm sorry, I couldn't get in my button. Can I have a recorded vote on this, please?
Sure. Deb, do you run through the individuals?
No, I normally don't do that. You just call the vote, and I record those that are opposed.
Okay, so now that it'll be a recorded vote. Oh, Member Eek, comment?
Yes, please. Just with respect to what we're voting on, early in our presentation discussions, I thought there was a motion to refer this back to the chief and his staff for perhaps further discussion, and that the outcome of those discussions would be brought forward for our October 28th meeting. Or are we voting on as per our agenda here today to accept the budget as presented? Which is it?
It's to be presented as reported here. There was no deferral motion that was made. It was discussion, and then it was just a couple of members just mentioned, I'll just vote the way I'm going to vote. So they didn't make any motion to defer it. So at this time, we're actually voting on the proposed 2022 budget as reported in section 5.1 of new business.
Thank you very much for the clarity.
Okay, so then I'll just again call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? The motion carries.
So Chair, that will be recorded that way, I take it, by names?
Yes, Deb is
Thank you.
nodding her head that is correct.
That's good, thanks.
Yeah, just wanted that clarity with our Deb. Okay, next item on the agenda is other new business. Is there any members that have other business for the Finance Committee here? Seeing none, then I'll just, Deb, do we need a motion to adjourn?
No, we do not.
Okay, so then we're adjourned. And thank you everyone for today's debate on the proposed budget. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Yeah.